They would cut off their ears or they would cut off bits of their body parts. Someone cut off a whole skull and kept it. Sledge is very good at articulating how tough some of these campaigns were. Not just the business of living and dying. That any campaign is like that. It was the horror of some of the things he experienced. His willingness to write about it in cold, sort of calculating terms, but all the more moving for that. If you think of the 4 campaigns that the US Marine Corps go through, and Guadalcanal, Cape Gloucester, Peleliu and Okinawa, they are taking 100% casualties in almost every single one of those campaigns. That doesn't mean that no one's surviving, but it does mean that they're getting replacements coming in who are refilling the dead, and then a lot of those guys are being killed. The original hardcore, the veterans, didn't have anything to do with the new guys coming in. They couldn't bear to make any kind of relationship with them because they knew there was a good chance they would die. So replacements would come in and they would be killed on Okinawa before anyone really knew who they were, before they had any kind of connection at all. And the hardcore of veterans really stuck together. What are the chances of you surviving in a frontline rifle company? Vanishingly small. Certainly the chances of you surviving without being wounded were virtually nil. And there's only one character I can think of who really does go through 2 campaigns without even being wounded, and that's Eugene Sledge. And even he's asking himself afterwards, how on earth did that happen? Because pretty much everyone else is wounded or killed. There's a moment on Peleliu where Sledge sees some of his colleagues collecting body parts from the Japanese. And he's utterly horrified. So they would cut off their ears or they would cut off bits of their body parts, or some of their faces. In one case, someone cut off a whole skull and kept it for a while. They also cut off hands and dried them in the sun, and they were genuinely intending to take them home as war trophies. At the start of the Peleliu campaign, Sledge is utterly horrified by this. He describes in The Old Breed, how could they have descended to such barbarism so quickly? Towards the end of the campaign, he's considering doing the same thing himself. This is a sensitive middle-class boy. For him to get to this place, you realize it was possible for any of them to descend into this heart of darkness. He doesn't, he recovers, and he writes of the guy who has taken the body parts. I hope my friend can come back from this dark place to which he's descended and to which I could see myself heading in the same direction. Something in him has stopped him from going quite to those depths. You realize that when he made the decision to write his memoir, he did it to somehow deal with the trauma of what he'd been through. It was a cathartic experience for him. I'm sure he had nightmares about it for years afterwards, that Sledge is sent out on outpost duty with a small group of guys. There's an officer and about 40 of them, and they're told to hold this position but to stay completely silent because they know there's a much larger Japanese force nearby, and they're really just to observe this Japanese force, not to engage it. So they set up the machine guns, they set up the mortars, which is Sledge's job, of course, and then they're told to wait. But during this period of waiting, in the middle of the night, a dog handler they've got with them loses his mind. He just cracks up and he starts shouting, and they try various means to shut this guy up because they're going to give the game away. They punch him, try and knock him out. That doesn't work. They hit him with a pistol harder. That doesn't knock him out. They give him a sedative. That doesn't work. And eventually the senior NCO and the officer between them order one of the younger guys to hit him with a shovel. He spark out. The only problem is they've hit him too hard. They've fractured his skull and they've killed him. So the next morning, The officer, to his credit, who's one of the better officers in the company, calls back to his company commander and says, "This has happened. I've got to get the guys out of there. You know, it's such a shock to the system. We need to get out of this position." And the company commander, to his credit, says, "Absolutely, I'll send some tanks in to bring you out." And there's a line in Sledge's book in which he basically sums up the experience for all of them. What they had to do to survive, but it was the right decision. They felt most sorry for the officer and the NCO who had to order the guy to do it. They didn't intend to kill him, but it was the only way they felt they could survive. It's just utterly horrific to imagine they had to kill one of their own soldiers, albeit not deliberately, to get through that situation.